At last, after 3 months, the long-awaited day arrived. It was the 9th day of the first lunar month in the year of the cat, February 2, 1963. The Lord of the Heaven of the Four Heavenly Kings issued a heavenly decree, commanding the celestial beings to descend and escort Musbah to heaven. They separated her spirit from her body. Just as before, one divine being entered and guarded her body to prevent it from decaying, while the others guided her spirit upward to the heaven of the Four Heavenly Kings, the lowest of the heavenly realms, where she would finally be reunited with her mother. Musbah felt herself lifted by divine power and carried upward at astonishing speed, so fast that it made her dizzy. At first, when she looked down, she could still see endless chains of mountains, winding rivers, and vast lakes stretching beyond the horizon for countless miles. As she continued ascending, however, the earth disappeared from view. Around her were only layer upon layer of clouds in every imaginable color. Looking upward, she noticed that the sun and the stars seemed to grow larger and larger. After a long journey, they finally reached a place known as the Gate of Heaven. Curiously, there was no visible gate at all, only an endless sea of clouds. Several majestic celestial guardians suddenly appeared and blocked their path. The guiding celestial beings immediately presented the heavenly decree, and after examining it, the guardians warmly allowed them to proceed. After flying for some time longer, magnificent heavenly cities gradually emerged among the drifting clouds, radiating dazzling mystical light. It truly was the heavenly realm. Throughout history, people had imagined heaven in countless glorious ways, attributing to it every conceivable beauty. Yet only after witnessing it with her own eyes did Musbah realize that even humanity's grandest imagination was crude and unsophisticated compared with the breathtaking reality. The celestial beings carried Musbah on a sweeping aerial tour so she could admire the entire realm. Everywhere stood vast, glittering palaces stretching so far that no end could be seen. Their architecture was majestic and dignified, yet remarkably elegant, adorned with decorative details of unimaginable refinement. Between the golden palaces, jeweled halls, magnificent towers, and ornate pavilions grew extraordinary trees unlike anything found in the human world. They blossomed with brilliant flowers of every color, carefully planted in orderly rows and graceful patterns that blended together in perfect harmony. The entire colossal city appeared to be built from gold, silver, and countless precious jewels. It stood magnificently amid drifting white and golden clouds, making the whole scene seem even more ethereal and dreamlike. Throughout the heavenly realm floated gentle celestial music. Every note was clear, delicate, and melodious. The sounds of marvelous heavenly instruments blended together with flawless harmony and exquisite subtlety. Their melodies flowed directly into the depths of her soul, lifting her spirit as the music rose and fell, at times soaring joyfully, at times gentle and serene, at times slow and majestic, then suddenly profound and deeply moving. Her sense of smell was equally enchanted by unfamiliar fragrances whose source she could not determine. Sweet, refreshing aromas filled the air everywhere. Breathing them in made her feel blissfully intoxicated, as though she was suspended between wakefulness and a beautiful dream. Everything she beheld was simultaneously magnificent, unfamiliar, and exquisitely detailed. So many marvelous wonders surrounded her that she scarcely knew how to describe them. As someone experiencing heaven for the very first time, Musbah stood spellbound. She became so captivated that she almost forgot why she had come, where she had come from, and even the purpose of her journey. At last, the celestial beings escorted her to an enormous dragon palace. It towered high above all the other palaces in grandeur, majesty, and exquisite craftsmanship. Brilliant rays of light streamed outward from within, illuminating the surrounding clouds while at the same time creating an atmosphere of remarkable coolness and tranquility. In the human world, imperial palaces were often called dragon palaces, but there the dragons were merely carved statues serving as symbols of royal authority. Here, however, the name was literal. Surrounding the palace stood gigantic dragon spirits. Their immense bodies were covered in beautifully detailed scales, their horns were magnificent, and their powerful eyes radiated overwhelming authority. They gracefully coiled themselves into majestic poses, forming orderly rows on both sides of the palace. Nor were dragons the only sacred creatures present. Legendary beings known only from ancient tales, including phoenixes, killens, and golden turtles, also stood nearby. Each was enormous, brilliantly colored, dignified, and vividly alive. Though every species possessed its own unique beauty, all stood in perfectly ordered ranks. Occasionally, inspired by delight, they gracefully circled through the air, waving their tails with effortless elegance and displaying their radiant splendor in a manner that left every observer spellbound. When the celestial beings brought Musbah to the palace, all these sacred creatures rose simultaneously to welcome them with the utmost courtesy before respectfully inviting him inside. Upon entering, Musbah was once again completely overwhelmed. Not only were the soaring domes and towering columns fashioned entirely from precious jewels, with countless rare heavenly treasures radiating dazzling colors throughout the palace, but she was equally astonished by the appearance of the celestial beings themselves. Each emitted a brilliant halo of light. They were extraordinarily tall, some several times the height of an ordinary human being, while others were dozens of times taller, their stature corresponding to the amount of merit each had accumulated. Their faces, bearing, and every movement were flawless beyond description. Their beauty possessed an effortless elegance that seemed almost impossible to comprehend. Standing among them, Musbah felt tiny and insignificant. Compared with these heavenly beings, she seemed as plain as a humble toad standing beside the most handsome men and beautiful women. The contrast filled her with deep humility and a measure of awe. Seated upon the magnificent dragon throne in the center of the great hall was one celestial being who surpassed all the others in stature. He stood approximately 24 cubits tall. He wore magnificent crimson robes and radiated brilliant light in every direction. His appearance combined supreme majesty with extraordinary nobility and dignity. Without anyone introducing him, Musbah immediately understood that this was none other than the Lord of the Heaven of the Four Heavenly Kings. Earlier, while traveling, the celestial guides had briefly instructed her in the formal etiquette required when appearing before the heavenly court. Accordingly, she and her escorts approached the heavenly Lord, respectfully proclaimed the formal salutations, and bowed according to heavenly protocol. The heavenly Lord graciously excused the formalities, invited everyone to be seated, and began to speak. His voice was refined and elegant, yet powerful and resonant, ringing through the hall like the clear sound of a great bronze bell.
Venerable One, although you were once a person burdened with grave sins, through the power of your great vow you opened the 10 hells and helped liberate countless sentient beings. The merit you have accumulated is therefore exceedingly great. Today, because of your profound filial devotion in seeking permission to ascend to heaven to see your mother, I have willingly granted your request. Furthermore, I wish for you to witness the heavenly realm with your own eyes so that, after returning to the human world, you may tell all living beings what you have seen. Let them know that there truly are heavens, Buddhas, saints, and divine beings, so they will no longer imagine that nothing exists beyond the human world and recklessly commit evil deeds that ultimately lead them into hell. Now listen carefully while I explain these matters to you. The beings of the human world are filled with greed and evil intentions. Their karma of killing is exceedingly heavy. Therefore wars and destruction never cease. Moreover, there is widespread sexual misconduct, the destruction of the true Dharma, rebellion, filial impiety, disloyalty, arrogance, and conceit. They curse heaven, revile earth, and show contempt towards saints and divine beings. Month after month, the heavenly deities report to us the countless sins committed by humanity. For this reason, from time to time it becomes necessary to transfer the virtuous people to other realms, after which the thunder deities and fire deities would destroy the human world so that it might be recreated, just as it was in ancient times, allowing only the virtuous to inherit it. However, because of her boundless compassion, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva has repeatedly pleaded on humanity's behalf, preventing such destruction while continually seeking ways to save sentient beings, for such a catastrophe would bring immeasurable suffering. Fortunately, many bodhisattvas from Tusi to heaven, moved by compassion, have now descended into the human world to liberate living beings. Through their teaching of the Buddha's Dharma, many people have begun to awaken. They have learned to cultivate themselves, adopt vegetarianism, recite the Buddha's name, and faithfully uphold the sacred scriptures. I now declare this clearly: whoever faithfully observes the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts throughout life shall, after death, be welcomed by heavenly attendants into this heaven of the 4 heavenly kings, where they may enjoy heavenly blessings while continuing their spiritual cultivation. Those who uphold not only the 5 precepts but also higher levels of moral discipline shall be reborn in correspondingly higher heavenly realms, or in Tusi to heaven, where they will meet Maitreya Buddha and continue cultivating under his guidance. As for virtuous monks and nuns whose practice has reached fulfillment and who sincerely aspire to rebirth in the Pure Land, they shall be reborn in the Western Pure Land of Amitabha Buddha. But those who call themselves Buddhists while destroying the Dharma, harming society, or who leave home, receive the monastic precepts, yet violate them through impurity, sexual misconduct, or attachment to sensual pleasures, shall, after death, fall into hell for countless years to repay their karma. There are also those who remain householders yet wholeheartedly devote themselves to the Dharma. They arouse the body-mind, build temples, print and distribute Buddhist scriptures, and support monks and nuns in their cultivation. Such people are bodhisattvas living the household life. The merit they accumulate is immeasurable and undefiled. By continually cultivating these wholesome deeds, they gradually progress toward the realization of nirvana. Supporting monks and nuns preserves the Sangha jewel, enabling the Buddha's teachings to continue guiding living beings. Printing and distributing Buddhist scriptures preserves the Dharma jewel, allowing future generations to rely upon the Buddha's teachings for cultivation. Nevertheless, those who accumulate such merit must always remain humble. They must never become arrogant or conceited, lest their precious blessings gradually be exhausted. All Buddhas wish for sentient beings to be reborn in the Buddha lands. All the heavenly realms long to welcome sentient beings into heaven. Yet people persist in committing evil and rushing headlong toward hell. Truly, such delusion is heartbreaking. Although every sentient being possesses Buddha nature, that Buddha nature is like a seed. The seed must be planted in the fertile soil of virtue. Day after day it must be nourished by the Buddha's teachings. Only then can it sprout, grow into a tree, blossom, bear fruit, and ultimately attain Buddhahood.
After the heavenly king's words had echoed like thunder throughout the hall, the Lord of the Heaven of the 4 heavenly kings instructed 2 celestial maidens to bring Musba's mother to the Dragon Palace. Before long, she arrived. After respectfully paying homage to the heavenly Lord according to heavenly protocol, mother and daughter were finally allowed to meet in private. Their joy was beyond words. At first, however, Musba could not recognize her own mother. When her mother had lived in the human world, she possessed the ordinary appearance of an aging woman. Now everything had changed. She stood before Musba in the magnificent form of a celestial maiden. Her body radiated light. She was tall, graceful, and incomparably beautiful. For a moment Musba simply stood there, stunned, hesitant to approach because she could scarcely believe that this radiant heavenly being could truly be her mother. Fortunately, her mother's voice had hardly changed. The familiar sound immediately awakened Musba's memory. Only then did she realize, this truly is my mother. Her mother had been waiting eagerly for this reunion. The moment she saw her daughter recognize her, she hurried forward and embraced her tightly. Overwhelmed with happiness and emotion, she spoke without stopping, as though afraid there might never be another opportunity. Have you finally come to heaven? Then quickly ask the heavenly king of the 4 heavenly kings to allow us to stay together here so that we may cultivate the Dharma side by side. Heaven is a place of indescribable joy. You will see that everything I say is true. When I lived in the human world, I loved listening to the radio, especially traditional opera. But the heavenly maidens here dance and sing countless times more beautifully than anything on earth. Celestial music naturally fills the sky without anyone needing to perform it. I cannot possibly describe it all. Hurry and ask permission so that we can remain together. Then you will experience these wonders for yourself. There are still so many marvelous things waiting for you to see. She spoke continuously, hardly pausing for breath. Musba wanted to explain, but she simply could not find an opportunity to interrupt. Seeing the situation, several heavenly beings stepped forward with gentle smiles and clarified the misunderstanding. They explained to Musba's mother,
she has not yet completed her lifespan in the human world. she has come only to visit and observe the heavenly realm. When the appointed time arrives, she must return to earth.
After mother and daughter spent more time talking together and satisfying the longing that had filled their hearts for so long, Musbah reluctantly said farewell. She then continued following the celestial guides on a tour of the heavenly realms. In earlier journeys, Musbah had already visited the realm of earth immortals, the realm of virtuous humans, and the dragon palace. Compared with the human world, those realms had seemed unimaginably beautiful, peaceful, and wondrous. Yet after seeing the heaven of the 4 heavenly kings, she realized they were far inferior. Even this lowest of the heavenly realms surpassed them many times over in beauty and splendor. She also remembered what the Buddhist scriptures taught. Above this heaven lay even higher celestial realms. Trayastrimsa heaven, Tuzita heaven, heaven of the transformation of others' enjoyments. Great Brahma heaven, each higher heaven possessed magnificence beyond the one below it. And yet, according to the Buddha's teachings, even all those heavenly realms combined could not compare with even a small part of the incomparable splendor of the Western Pure Land of Amitabha Buddha. As Musbah followed the celestial beings farther into the heavenly world, she found herself completely overwhelmed by what she saw. Everything was astonishingly beautiful. Magnificent palaces stretched endlessly in every direction. They seemed to be fashioned from precious jewels, emitting soft, radiant light. The roads were broad and perfectly clean. Not a speck of dust could be found anywhere. Gentle, fragrant breezes drifted through the air. Everywhere flowers bloomed in brilliant colors unlike any found in the human world. The entire realm radiated peace, purity, and joy. The celestial beings explained that every blessing found there had arisen naturally from wholesome karma accumulated over countless lives. Nothing in heaven had been created through greed or competition. Whatever one needed simply appeared naturally according to one's merit. No one worried about food. No one struggled for wealth. No one feared theft. No one lived in anxiety about tomorrow. The minds of the heavenly beings were calm, generous, and free from many of the worries that burden human life. As Musbah admired the heavenly scenery, one of the celestial guides spoke.
The blessings enjoyed here are the result of wholesome deeds performed in the human world. Those who faithfully observed the precepts, practiced generosity, protected living beings, printed and distributed Buddhist scriptures, supported the 3 jewels, and cultivated wholesome conduct, may be reborn here to enjoy these heavenly rewards. But remember this well, even heavenly blessings are not eternal. When one's accumulated merit is exhausted, one must leave heaven and continue following the cycle of rebirth. Therefore, the Buddhas always encourage beings not merely to seek rebirth in heaven, but to cultivate wisdom and liberation so that they may ultimately transcend birth and death altogether.
Hearing these words, Musbah reflected deeply. The beauty surrounding her was beyond imagination. Yet even this magnificent heavenly realm was still not the final destination taught by the Buddha. The ultimate goal remained liberation from the endless cycle of rebirth and the attainment of perfect enlightenment. She silently resolved that after returning to the human world, she would practice with even greater diligence and encourage others to cultivate virtue, recite the Buddha's name, uphold the Dharma, and seek the path leading beyond both heaven and hell. After bidding farewell to her mother, Musbah continued following the celestial guides deeper into the heaven of the 4 heavenly kings. Before long, they arrived at a magnificent palace unlike anything she had ever imagined. The palace radiated brilliant golden light. Its towering halls seemed to extend endlessly into the heavens. The atmosphere was majestic, yet peaceful beyond words. There, she was granted an audience with the Lord of the Heaven of the 4 heavenly kings. Filled with reverence, Musbah respectfully prostrated herself before the heavenly king. The heavenly king looked upon her with kindness and said,
"The causes and conditions in your life have now led you to follow the Mahayana Dharma, using skillful means to guide living beings. When you return to the human world, encourage people not to be deluded into believing that burning paper money and paper offerings can liberate the dead. Such practices are ultimately fruitless. Instead, teach them to recite sutras, invoke the Buddha's name, refrain from killing living beings, and print and distribute Buddhist scriptures. These wholesome deeds greatly reduce karmic obstacles and help beings attain liberation much sooner.
Musbar respectfully bowed and replied, "Revered one, I vow to obey your instruction. No matter how much hardship I must endure, even if it takes countless lifetimes, I will never become discouraged. My greatest wish is to help sentient beings awaken and return to the Buddha's teachings. That alone is my joy." The heavenly king smiled gently.
Your vow will surely be fulfilled. In the future, you shall attain the fruit of realization.
As Musbar continued touring the heavenly realm, a profound realization gradually arose within her heart. Compared with heaven, the human world now seemed like a place of exile. Generation after generation, wars erupted without end. Disease, poverty, endless toil, and countless dangers surrounded human life. People, blinded by ignorance of the law of cause and effect, struggled and competed over fleeting pleasures and temporary gains. For the sake of wealth, fame, power, or a moment of desire, they created endless karma, binding themselves ever more tightly to suffering. She herself had once lived exactly that way. Only now, after witnessing both hell and heaven, did she truly understand the difference. People rushed headlong toward the gates of hell, yet many did so enthusiastically. Meanwhile, wholesome deeds that lead to lasting peace and happiness were dismissed as a waste of time or mere superstition. How ironic the human world could be. So many sages had descended into the world to teach humanity, yet most people merely laughed at them and refused to believe. They still failed to understand one simple truth: there is no need to struggle endlessly against one another. If people would only learn to let go, to share, to forgive, then the law of cause and effect would naturally arrange favorable conditions for everyone. The heavenly realm itself stood as living proof of that truth. Every magnificent palace, every precious jewel, every miraculous ability enjoyed by the heavenly beings, none had been seized through competition, none had been stolen from others. All had arisen naturally from the wholesome acts of letting go while living in the human world. By letting go of hatred, resentment, prejudice, and stubborn attachment, people extinguished countless fires of karma. By letting go of greed for wealth, fame, and power, they learned generosity, kindness, and selflessness. Thus immeasurable merit was created. By letting go of arrogance and the illusion of already knowing everything, they became humble enough to learn from the teachings of sages and enlightened beings. Through humility, wisdom gradually arose. Only then could they recognize the true path leading to lasting happiness. Musbar reflected silently. If everyone simply lived according to these principles, all would accumulate immeasurable blessings. They would one day enjoy peace in the heavenly realms, or even attain the Buddha lands. Why struggle endlessly over fleeting gains within the narrow confines of the human world, mistaking suffering for happiness? The longer she remained in heaven, the less she wished to return to earth. Finally, the Lord of the Heaven of the Four Heavenly Kings addressed Musbar one last time. He said,
"Return to the human world and remind all living beings. Do not become attached to this temporary physical body. Time will inevitably destroy it. Instead, care for your mind, for that alone endures. Nourish your heart with the Buddha's teachings. Learn to forget yourself for the sake of others. Do not live selfishly. Whoever cultivates in this way will find the gates of heaven standing open, waiting to welcome them."
Having spoken these words, the Heavenly King issued a decree ordering the celestial beings to escort Musbar back to the human world. She respectfully prostrated herself in farewell. Before departing, she slowly turned to look across the heavenly realm one final time. An indescribable feeling of reluctance filled her heart. She wished she could remain there forever, but her lifespan in the human world had not yet come to an end. She still had vows to fulfill. She still had living beings to help. The celestial beings then accompanied her as they descended through layer after layer of luminous clouds. Soon they returned to the human world. Her spirit re-entered her physical body. She slowly opened her eyes. Once again she found herself surrounded by the familiar sights of earthly life. The endless bustle, competition, the pursuit of wealth and fame. Exactly as it had always been. Nothing had changed. She let out a long sigh. Countless thoughts surged through her mind. In less than a single year, she had experienced things almost no human being could imagine. She had undergone clinical death. She had lived with muteness and deafness. She had descended into hell. She had ascended to heaven. She had witnessed with her own eyes both the unimaginable horrors produced by evil karma and the incomparable joy arising from wholesome karma. Now, looking once again upon the ordinary human world, she understood it from an entirely different perspective. Human life, with all its joy and sorrow, gain and loss, love and hatred, wealth and poverty, karma and consequence, everything flared brightly for a brief moment, then faded away. Yet the karmic causes created by those actions continued long afterward. She reflected deeply. What, then, is the true purpose of a human life? Each person, she realized, must answer that question for themselves. As for Musbah, she had already found her own answer. To Musbah, the human world had become nothing more than a temporary place of cultivation. She no longer wished to chase after wealth or fame, nor did she seek worldly pleasures. From that time forward, she devoted herself wholeheartedly to a single purpose: to encourage people to understand the law of cause and effect, to abandon killing, to practice compassion, to recite the Buddha's name, to uphold the sutras, and to cultivate wholesome deeds. She hoped that as many people as possible would avoid the painful paths she herself had witnessed and instead move toward peace and liberation. Looking back on everything she had experienced, she understood more clearly than ever before. The human world is neither inherently a place of happiness nor of suffering. It is a place where causes are created. Heaven and hell are the results. Each thought, each word, each action, plants a seed. Sooner or later, every seed inevitably bears its corresponding fruit. No one else can choose that harvest for us. Thus, Musbah spent the remainder of her life earnestly practicing the Dharma and sharing her extraordinary experiences whenever appropriate. She never claimed that people should believe her simply because of her personal story. Instead, she urged everyone to examine their own lives carefully, cultivate virtue, and personally verify the Buddha's teachings through sincere practice. Only then, she believed, could one truly understand the profound law of cause and effect. This is the account of A Journey to Heaven, Twice Through Hell. Whether one regards it as a personal testimony, a spiritual experience, or a moral reflection, its central message remains unchanged. Every action has consequences. Compassion gives rise to peace. Wholesome deeds create wholesome results. And genuine spiritual cultivation begins with transforming one's own heart.